Hey, everybody, this is Casey and Chad with the Fish Lift Eat podcast. Welcome back to another Fish Tip Friday. Here's Casey with another tip for you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the bit where we can do another little tip here for you. So today's tip is going to be related to wintertime fishing. We got these cold water temperatures, and wintertime conditions where fish are kind of they're schooling up. They're not moving around near as much. So this is a tip that I picked up a few years back. Um, but one thing you really want to be conscious of whenever dealing with, bass or whatever species you're targeting is you want to have real subtle presentations. Sometimes you've got to let your bait, stay in one spot for a long time before the fish will eat it or anything like that. And, there's an old timer used to tell me, whenever you think you're moving your bait too slow, slow it down even more in the wintertime because, you got to. Well, it was always kind of hard for me to know how much I needed to slow down. So I picked up this tip from somebody to where whenever you're working your bait, put your rod tip down into the water, and then what that will allow you to do is the vibrations of your rod will make ripples coming off of it. You can visually see that in the water to know exactly how much you're actually moving that bait and putting action to that bait that you don't even realize, just because we're cold, we're shivering naturally, and any little subtle action that you put on that bait can be the difference between that fish committing to it and you catching that fish and spooking it away because of the unwanted action that you're putting on it. So one technique that I utilize a lot in the winter time is a drop shot. It's a good way to get that bait to kind of suspend off the bottom down there without having to move it any. You can just kind of keep it right there in front of the fish's face. So for example, right here, I got one of my favorite drop shot baits here. It's from Fish or Die Bait Company. It's the Gadsden. And so the way this bait kind of orients in the water, it's flat. Whenever that drop shot weight, it's down here on the bottom of the lake, and this bait's just kind of hovering up here. Well, I don't want it moving a whole lot in the wintertime, but if I start shaking, then that bait's going to start dancing around a lot more than maybe I want it to. So when I put my rod tip in the water and then I can see those ripples, I'm able to visually see it and better control my rod and control the action of that to where I can keep that bait as still as I can and as subtle as I can in front of those bass to where they'll commit to it even in this cold weather. So when in doubt, slow it down as much as you can, but then use those little cues that you've got in front of you by putting your rod tip in the water and be able to slow it down and make the right presentation. So that's the tip I've got that you can take out to the water this week and going forward through the rest of these cold months to help you catch some more fish.
All right, that sounds great, Casey. Thank you. So, I've always thought that with bass fishing, bass are more enticed with a lot more movement, but the colder weather, that slows them down considerably.
Yeah, considerably. I mean, they're still going to get out and feed. They still got to eat in the winter time, and there are ways. There's definitely ways you can still trigger reaction with them at certain times and certain occurrences. Early in the morning, whenever they're coming out and doing their the first big feed they do on, say, a ball of shad or something like that. But then as the day lingers on, well, the bass will kind of tend to slide back out to deeper water, and they'll school up. It's nothing short to find 20, 30, up to 50 fish kind of right there all close together, and through most of the day they're not moving. So they get kind of tricky to catch. So that's where, when you can make a real subtle slow presentation and stay on top of those fish, that gives you opportunity to catch them throughout the day, not just during that morning feeding window or that evening feeding window. And then, but being able to keep that bait still and as natural as you can, because if you ever watch a fish swim in the wintertime in real cold water, even bait fish, like, it's a real, they're not out there cruising around. It's like a real tight wobble, like they're not using any more energy than is absolutely necessary. So being able to make your bait be as realistic as you can by not putting unnecessary movements on it will trigger those bass to be more likely to eat it in those cold water situations.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and thanks Casey for that tip. We will.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We'll catch back up with everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Fish Tip Friday. Have a good week.
See you guys.